I've been stopped by NYPD over 300 times.
No way.
Yeah. I got arrested probably 12 times in my life, around there. And then...
Even before sort of the bigger prison sentence.
Yeah. Every day I was getting stopped. 2-3 times a day I was getting... But I knew how to hide the drugs, When they would come in, I knew how to put it in my butt crack,
Coss Marte, Dominicano, I just heard.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Your parents are Dominican?
Both parents are Dominican. My mom immigrated to New York City when she was 6 months pregnant with me, and we ended up in the Lower East Side. So
Nice.
I'm a American-born citizen.
Yeah.
Thank God for these days.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
You pronounce it Coss Marte.
Yeah, I knew I learned Spanish before English, and I have dreams in Spanish still.
You do, just
Yeah.
like me. I still dream in Portuguese as well. So I'm going to introduce everyone to you. At 19, you were making $2 million a year selling drugs. But at 23, you were arrested and sentenced to 7 years. In prison, a doctor told you that your cholesterol was so high that you might not survive the sentence, right? So you started working out in your cell and you lost 70 pounds in 6 months. In solitary confinement, you actually wrote out a full business plan. Pretty cool. And today you're the CEO of ConBody, which is a prison-style boot camp that hires former cons who can't get a job because of their records, as well as ConBud, one of the first legal cannabis dispensaries in New York City, in the same neighborhood that you used to deal drugs, right?
Yes.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yes.
Okay, let's start. I'm so happy to have you. Welcome to the Hidden Third.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a huge fan.
Oh,
I appreciate you.
Thank you. So you grew up in the Lower East Side, you just said, right? What was that like?
Rivington and Forsyth Street, in the Lower East Side in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, was a different story from what you see now, the gallery, poodle walking, the bar crawling type of neighborhood,
Right.
It was a very drug-infested neighborhood. I remember as a kid, like just seeing about 100 people line up to buy heroin.
Wow.
Every 10 steps we took, there was heroin needles, And I mean, the drug problem is still bad, but, I seen the people that sold those drugs, and those people had the big chains and the nice clothes and the cars and the woman. And, for me, that looked like real success,
What did your parents do?
My dad worked in bodegas. He worked when he got here in 1983, he worked in East New York. Rough time, probably on the Madagascar, one of the worst blocks in East New York. So he had to carry a gun every day.
Wow.
My mom worked in the sewing factories, back then in Bleecker Street. And then my dad eventually had a bodega in front of my building when I was a kid.
Wow. Did you have brothers and sisters growing up?
Yeah, I got two. Two from both my parents,
yeah.
2 older sisters and a younger brother. My brother is a city council member for downtown Manhattan, actually. And we grew up in head to toe. My sisters became very successful too. My sister was, I don't know if I could say this, but like became the first Latina woman to become reached the executive director status at Goldman Sachs.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Then now is like working for Merrill Lynch in London. She's like CFO under 3 companies under their branch.
Cool. So did your parents go to college?
Yeah, my mom went to college in Dominican Republic. She was a teacher in Dominican Republic, but like they grew up in the middle of nowhere, Canete, which is like a small little town, like 30 minutes away from like San Francisco de Macorís, which is next to Santiago. It's like they're in the boondocks,
Have you been, by the way?
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And like,
area.
they used to send me because I used to get in trouble, and they, as a punishment, as like a Dominican kid in New York, it's a funny joke, but they send us for the summer. Like, you got in trouble, you're going to work the fields or whatever. So I used to work the cacao fields.
Wow. Huge culture shock for you, I'm sure, going back there when you were a kid. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I went back. So I went when I was like 5. So I briefly like remember that time. And then I remember going back when I was like 14 because I got in trouble, and then.
Why did you get in trouble? Was that when you started in the drug business or doing drugs?
Yeah. So I started at like probably smoking at the age of 10, 11, weed, and then eventually like my cousins who lived in the building on Rivington Street, like we lived in the same floor. It was like mostly all Dominicans, a couple Puerto Rican families, and a Mexican family that lived in the building. But every floor sold drugs, and so like I had cousins in pretty much every floor, and they were, I was buying ounces of weed from them. And then I started bagging it up and selling it in school, and eventually
because you realized you could make money from it.
Yeah, I mean, at the time I was working for my dad in his bodega downstairs in front of the building. I was 10 years old. I was opening up the store, like cleaning all the shelves, mopping, sweeping, and then after school, like same thing, going back to working the register. Sometimes they put me in to cook. My dad used to make some tacos and sandwiches, so we used to like hustle and do all that stuff. But I was doing everything for him. He was just, and then he was not paying. He was paying me $30 a week and with a sandwich, and so I used to be frustrated, because I was broke, and so when I got real money off of selling weed at that time, I was like pretty content.
Who are you selling weed to? To just the other students?
Students, kids from the block, people that I grew up with.
How much money were you making at the time?
$300 a week.
Wow, that's a lot of money. And you were like
13.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good money. And did your parents know at the time that you were making that kind of money?
They saw stuff, that I had, like sneakers and clothes and, all that stuff, like I was probably the first kid in my class, to have a cell phone, the Nokia. Oh, no, it was not the Nokia ones. It was the
BlackBerry?
No, before that, it was the StarTech.
Okay.
So the StarTech, like that, it was like a 1996 phone. I remember 97 phone. I brought that to school. Everybody's like, "What?"
Yeah, sure.
But I had a beeper too. At that time, so I was selling weed through my beeper line. Writing my phone number.
You were like a real young teen dealer.
Yeah, it never stopped. It never stopped.
And so did your parents, you think they suspected that that's what you were doing? You were getting the money from?
Well, my dad knew he caught on very early, and then he was just like, be careful. I think he embraced it more, it was hard times, it was not like we had a line down the block because of Instagram posts, it was like, us me writing in a magic marker and putting a sign on the door saying like, hey, sandwiches are 50% off today or something like that, it was different times, and like minimum wage in the city was like $3.50,
So in a way, yeah, as much as your dad probably didn't condone it, it was helpful for the family because you guys were.
Yeah, I mean, he turned a blind eye, but my mom was like, hell no. Like my mom she thinks marijuana kills people. She's old school Dominican, Catholic. Yeah, she was. So
she wasn't happy.
Hell no.
Yeah. But then you became really good at it. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so how it grew was that basically at like 16, 17, I was on a corner on a milk crate, selling weed, coke, 24 hours a day. I like literally slept on the front of the bodega, 2 blocks away from my mom's house on Broome and Eldridge. And I never stopped for like 3 years straight. I was just on the block. People knew me. I would brush my teeth on the corner. I would like buy new clothes and just get dressed in and throw the clothes that I had out, but the hustle never stopped on that corner. And then
why was it that you were so, what do you think drove you at the time to, was it just you really wanted to make a lot of money?
I always like aspired to like make money, like because I was as a kid, like I don't know, we were broke, and I hated the fact like it was embarrassing to see like my mom to go to like Salvation Army and and like buy the cheapest shit for us, and pay less, and then the kids, in school, making fun of you and all that stuff. So it's like I gotta go get it,
I've it's interesting you say that. I remember interviewing a actually here on the podcast interviewing somebody where he was talking about how money, he became so obsessed with money growing up as a teenager, and I was challenging him on that, the idea of just wanting money, and he said something which I think is obviously so true, which is unless you actually grow up without money, you don't understand what it means to not have it. So you don't understand why it becomes the most important thing in the world for you to figure out how to get money, right?
Exactly. And at that time, that was that mindset, and my mindset was to be rich, And so I was always rocking around like $5,000-$10,000 of cash in my pocket. At times I was figuring out how to fit like $50,000, $100,000 in my pocket because I'm transporting drugs to different states and
weren't you afraid that the police, since you said like everybody knew that what you were doing on the corner for all those years, where was the police?
They would jump on me, so they would raid me every day. I've been stopped by NYPD over 300 times.
No way.
Yeah. I got arrested probably 12 times in my life, around there. And then
even before sort of the bigger prison sentence.
Yeah. Every day I was getting stopped 2-3 times a day. But I knew how to hide the drugs, when they would come in, I knew how to put it in my butt crack, and then get searched on the block. Sometimes they would put my pants down, to see if I had it in there, but it wouldn't be there,
So where were the hiding places? So
different spots on the corner, I had there was a payphone, and then there was I remember at the time the bodega had like these big posters, and then the posters flipped these they were the holders on the posters, so I would stash all my stuff in there. Or one old school back in the day thing was I used to see the people that used to sell dope. They used to have a magnet box, so if the cops are coming, just throw it on the bottom of a car.
Oh wow!
Because they would search the bottom of the car, but this would be magnetically stuck in us.
It would be really suck if the car was gone once you got back there. No.
Yeah, there's times that things like that happen. Yeah.
What was the first time you remember?
I was 13. I remember I was with my little brother and my little cousin at the time, and I was selling a couple bags of weed. And I remember smoking with this guy, my boy Chuck, at the time, and we smoked a blunt on the block, and these grown men just grabbed us up. Well, he grabbed me up, grabbed my wrist, and he said, "Drop the blunt," and he threw me on the ground.
And this was undercover cops?
Undercover cops, it was they ride you around in a paddy wagon all day, picking up one person at a time for a lot of cannabis arrests, and that's how it was.
And in that case, you were just smoking a blunt? It wasn't even for possession or for
just smoking, and I had 2 bags of weed on me,
Okay.
and then my brother at the time, he was 9, I was 13, and he had a little starter jacket, and I remember him opening up the starter jacket and opening up his jacket, and he said, "Don't arrest my brother. I'm part of the DARE program." And he had a DARE shirt at the time. And I remember he said that, and the cops laughed, And so they were
so
they wrote the report, they had me arrested. They were gonna take me in, and they were like, "Yo, you're 13, man. We're gonna let you go," And I remember them releasing me with my brother, and went back home, but they called my mom. And I remember my mom saying "What?" Just, cursing me out,
And you're going back on the streets and continuing to
and
do
then
it.
then I never stopped.
And so you did, let's just say you didn't have the best relationship with NYPD at the time.
Nah, absolutely not. But it became a better relationship at one point because Broome and Eldridge was known for the smelliest, dirtiest corner in New York City. It was a New York Times article wrote about it. But it used to stink because all the chicken, poultry, it's Chinatown, Lower East Side. So it stank crazy. And so we would go into the bodega and get a bottle of mistolin and clean the block with a brush deck. and it'll smell so good that the cops will be like, if you guys clean it and keep it like this, we're not gonna stop you, today.
And so you kept doing it.
We kept doing it, kept cleaning it,
Good.
and it was crazy times, stuff that you can't make up,
And so you would be arrested constantly, and then what would happen? You'd just be released, or
Yeah, for like cannabis charges, a lot of smoking or like small amounts of weed possession and stuff like that.
And then once you started selling cocaine and you start selling on the block on the milk crate, how much money were you making then?
Depending, 3,000-4,000 a day, on the day of the week. There was like a day, like Tuesday nights were crazy nights, and it started changing more because the neighborhood started changing. It was the first neighborhood that I see that ever got gentrified in America first, right? When we say hipsters, everybody thinks about Williamsburg, but they came to the Lower East Side and it got too expensive in the Lower East Side, so they went to Williamsburg, over the bridge.
Yeah.
And then it started extending to like Bushwick, East New York, all that bullshit. Now you see galleries in fucking Crown Heights, But in the Lower East Side, it was a Tuesday nights. It was like a raid of hipsters that came to this first bar that opened up. It was like, it was called Happy Endings. And Happy Endings was on Broome and Forsyth. And that was like our first marketing round of like, getting these young kids like using all types of drugs, because they were like coming up to us like, hey, you got weed? Or we would be like, yo, we got weed and coke and all, and they'd be like, great, and so
these were kids that were coming from sort of like the upper
NYU,
East, upper West,
stuff like that. Yeah.
And who had money to spend on drugs. Right. Yeah. And what kind of drugs were you selling to them?
Coke, weed.
Coke and
weed at the time. Yeah.
And where were you getting the coke and the weed from?
I can't talk about that too much, but like the weed mostly different areas. Washington Heights was a big weed spot. They had the best haze.
Where was it coming from? Do you know?
People were growing it.
In their homes.
Yeah, people were growing it in their homes. People were, like I had boys that were using the project buildings to grow, because in it, when the project buildings are federally owned, so you don't have to pay electricity. So you get free electricity, and it wouldn't,
Which is what you need to grow weed in mass scales, because you need the heat lamps and the cooling.
Yep, and that's how people got caught when they used like regular spots where like the energy bill went too crazy.
Right.
And so that brought like red flags, but NYCHA is free to...
I didn't know. Yeah. So it was basically indoor grows at the time all over New York, I guess.
There's a lot of indoor growers. But then people were bringing stuff from Cali and Florida and Jamaica and all types of Mexico. There was like the Mexican brickweed, which was like seeds and dirt and nasty,
It's not great, right?
But it made money,
Yeah, and the coke, you can't talk about it?
The coke, I mean, I could talk about it, I guess. The first time was just people from the block. When I was a kid, there was just so much coke in my neighborhood,
So
basically I bought an 8-ball, and then from there just started scaling, and then started buying like stuff from like Uptown and stuff like that, kilos. And then there was a point where we were, things were being trafficked,
From out of the country?
From out of the country, yeah.
Do you know where from?
Puerto Rico, you can't go through it. I don't think anybody's going through this tactic anymore, but at the time it was no, you go to the airport, you get this like body scan stuff. Back then it was just, you had just to pass the metal detector. So, we had kids that were like 14, 15 years old, carrying a half a brick at a time.
On their bodies.
On their bodies, in their underwear, and just go right through, don't hit no metal, through that alarm, and just go through,
And these were kids that you guys were paying to do this?
No, it was part of the cost that was baked in, from the purchase, so.
But were you purchasing directly to the people in Puerto Rico? And
they would. They would bring the kids over.
And they would send the kids over. Yep. Got it. Okay.
Yep.
And do you know where the Puerto Ricans were getting the cocaine from?
Usually it was coming from like DR probably, or Colombia, I don't know. I don't know.
What was the quality of the cocaine back then compared to now, you think?
It was like, I remember like 89%, like people getting locked up and tested at 89%.
Oh. And now it's much less, right? It's not as pure.
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah, I don't.
So
I haven't sold coke and
right.
trying to get me indicted.
I will ask my other sources and I'll come back to you.
I'm a different man now. You know, I go to law library.
Okay, so you then started making serious money. And did you think at that time, was it, did you get to a point where you didn't actually have to be the one on the corner selling drugs, where you'd have people doing that?
Yeah, and it was not, it didn't become a corner game anymore. You know, it became a delivery service, you know. So from the corner, it became after that to a delivery service.
How would that work?
So basically, like all those people that were coming into those bars, me and my boy like made up these cards, and we called it at the time Happy Endings, the name of the bar. But then people were calling for Happy Endings, which was bad branding for us. So we changed the name eventually, you know.
And you'd be like, what kind of
there was times where we showed up and they were like, so, and I'm like, what? And it was crazy. I can't even tell you, but there's stories I could tell you that I had to like,
so wait, so they were expecting like a woman for a happy
ending,
and you guys would show up with drugs.
Yeah, and they're like, where's the lady, you know? And I'm like, what lady? I was like, I got the white lady, you know? And they would buy too, because, you know, we were like showing up sometimes, you know, but
so it could actually be a good marketing.
Yeah. But it was crazy times. You know, we were making so many deliveries because we had 7 cell phones, because each phone only held 1,500 contact numbers at that time. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you had these flip phones. So we're all the phones and different cards that we were making. You know, people were calling nonstop. Wow. They were nonstop. Like, I'm picking up 2 phones at a time while these other 2 phones are ringing. Wow. Where you at? 23rd 5th? 20 minutes? Blah, blah, blah. Whoa. Dispatching with a radio phone with the Nextels. Hey, I need a driver, 23rd 5th. How many? 20 minutes? All right, copy, be right there. Boom. And then and I will have sometimes like an easel board. And just like write down the whole, do our dispatching, just no spreadsheet. It was just paper, pen, and the phones, you know, and it never stopped.
That is crazy. Yeah. How many customers do you think you had at the time?
At least 10,000, you know, at least 10,000. Yeah.
So would you say that you were the first sort of city scale distributor of that type?
No, I was not the first to start a delivery service. I feel like a lot of people have been doing delivery services for years, you know, especially in beeper times. Mm-hmm. But I think I was the first to like scale it, you know, to a different level.
Were you just selling inside of Manhattan, or you were going out to Brooklyn?
Tri-state area.
Everywhere?
Yeah, we were going everywhere.
And what was it mainly weed?
Weed and coke.
Both.
You know, so a lot of the people that were using coke, you know, they were calling us at like 4 or 5 in the morning for weed, because they had to come down from their coke high.
And then people would pay you in cash?
Yeah.
And what do you do with the cash?
Spend it. What do you do? I don't know.
You couldn't put it in the bank. I mean,
I couldn't put it in the bank. You know, I mean, I had a couple bank accounts, but yeah, it was just cash and shoe boxes, you know, and sneaker boxes, like $30,000 in each sneaker box. You know,
at your house? Or were you living by yourself at this point?
No, I was living with my friend, you know, who was my partner, you know, and we was doing a lot of crazy stuff. You know.
Did you guys have to hire security to make sure that you were protecting that cash?
No, I feel like we were security, you know. I don't know. It's just like when you grow up in that circumstance, like the corner, like I inherited the corner from like somebody that sold drugs in the corner for 20, 30 years, you know? And so like everybody, like I couldn't sell, you know, on my mom's corner because that corner was owned by another drug dealer, you know? And I sold there and I had to fight those people, you know, like it was you know, and we're just a block away, you know. That's how serious it was, you know, back then.
Yeah. So the territory mattered. It was very important, sort of maintaining your
Yeah.
area.
Yeah, and I would probably say I was probably the first 24 hours delivery service because nobody was doing 24 hours. I was nonstop. I would stay up for like 3-5 days at a time taking caffeine pills just to stay up because the phones. In my dreams, I heard the ringtones of the phone. You know, like that's how much it was embedded.
Did you do cocaine?
No.
Never?
No. I tried it, yeah, when I was very young. My cousin pulled the trick on me at 11. He made me sniff. He put it like in this Vicks thing, you know, this inhaler thing, but he put some inside it, cracked it open, and he was like, take a hit. He's like 13, you know, and then I felt like my whole neck, like my throat, like turned numb. Oof. And I was scared, you know, I felt like I couldn't swallow, you know.
So you never did it again?
Yeah, well, I experimented like probably like smoking it in a blunt, you know, joking around with friends, but
it wasn't for you.
It wasn't for me.
Because that could have worked better maybe than the caffeine pills to keep you awake.
Yeah, nah, I don't need that, you know. I just saw so many people, like I just saw, and crack, you know, I saw crack when I was on the block, to seeing how devastated, you know, I was, and I didn't, at the time, it was just money, but you know, when I got locked up, I just felt like so much regret.
So you were selling crack as well, not just cocaine?
At one time, yeah, but the delivery service was just like cocaine. Weed and cocaine. But when I was like on the corner block, I was crack, coke, weed.
Why did you not deliver crack? Just because that's not what people ask for?
Well,
the crack was more of a corner thing.
Yeah, well, it was a block thing. You in the hood,
right?
The people that are smoking crack we were selling $10 crack, you know, bags, you know. So, the person that was delivering, we had $100 minimum, you know. At one point, it became a $200 minimum, you know.
Did you see a change in the neighborhood with the crack epidemic? Did it happen while you were selling drugs, or was crack already a problem when you started?
Crack was already a problem. Right. Crack was like, I've been in crack houses where, like, I remember like this is New York City, Lower East Side, dirty, you know, like Chinatown, dirty, like, you know, these buildings decapitated with burned out windows, you know, boarded up, like going into these crack houses and like roaches. Like I remember seeing roaches crawl over people's faces while they take a hit, and the roach on the crack pipe, you know. And I was in those rooms, like selling in those crack houses, like I was sleeping in there because those people would just constantly call me, you know. So I was like, you know, I'll be in there, you know.
And you say that's when you went to prison later on, that's something that you regretted, selling crack?
I think even selling coke, you know, for me, I don't know what I was putting in people's bodies, right? I was getting it from somebody else, you know. I don't know what could have happened, and I seen people being so much destroyed with straight cocaine from the street, you know.
Was heroin at all? Did you sell heroin at all?
I did. I've sold heroin, not a big amount, you know, but my neighborhood was heroin city, you know. Like, people don't talk about the Lower East Side as like drug neighborhood, you know, but in the 80s you would see like lines of people buying heroin, and there was dope stamps. Actually, like Clayton, who we spoke about, he collected every dope stamp it's like a 100-page book, and he has all those dope stamps of each corner.
So the dope stamps is when the people were selling dope, they would put their own stamps in there, sort of like a marketing tool,
and
which they do with fentanyl these days as well. Yeah.
And I have friends that would get paid to go to the dope bagging spots. So they would go in there, they would have to like strip down, you know, with their boxes on. I'm talking about 12, 13, 14-year-old kids, you know, you're just bagging up heroin, you know, with something across your face, you know, and
and stripped down so that they didn't steal the drugs.
Yeah.
Wow. So you started this massive 24-hour. Did you have a name for your company, the distribution company? It was Happy
Parties,
Endings at the beginning?
Party in the beginning. Happy Endings, and then there was Party Services, and then we divided Trees for Pleasures because we branched out to like having a couple people just do the weed delivery, and then more people do the coke delivery at the time.
And it was you and one partner mainly?
Yeah.
The bosses?
Yeah, and we basically started on the corner together, Yeah.
And at this point, this is when you were making about $2 million
like
of dollars.
$5 million in revenue a year and like $2 million profit.
And most of this was being put into shoe boxes?
Shoe boxes, and then buying jewelry, clothes, sneakers. I had a lot of sneakers.
What were conversations with your parents at this point?
I was not living with them, at that point. I probably stopped living with my parents like around 14. And then went back to living with them like at 16. But then after 18, 17, 18, I was living on my own.
Right. Were you still living in the Lower East Side?
Still living in the Lower East Side, in the projects,
What was the peak when you were making the most money? How old were you?
23. That's when I got locked up.
What happened?
The undercover DEA agents raided us. Basically, somebody told them that I had this delivery service a while back. And they gave up some sort of information, and they started buying drugs off of us. So they bought like 37 times, from us. And
so they were building a case.
They were building a case,
right.
And that was, and the day that they started capturing all of us, I was the last person to get caught, and they got me in the stash house with 5 pounds of weed and 1.5 kilos of coke.
So tell me about that day. How did that day start?
So I'm in the South Bronx. This is a stash house up there, and then we, I remember like going up there, and I'm dealing with the phones because at the time, the dispatcher that we had, I basically let go because he was stealing our customers, so we had somebody like answering the phones for us and doing all the dispatching, and he started a phone line on the side. And then that phone line on the side which was the phone that got tapped by the feds. And so they started building a case, and I'm sending, at the time I caught him doing that. We separated ties, and now I'm just dealing with the phones by myself, and then my partner at the time was locked up. And so I'm doing everything. I got like 42 people like waiting to see, to be delivered. And the queue was getting longer and longer because all my drivers were getting caught one at a time. So at the time we had Nextels, and when you heard the feedback go beep, beep, it was either like you lose connection or it's not going through, it's not working. Right. And so every time I sent somebody to a location, they stopped answering like 10 minutes before, and it was just weird. So they kept calling, and I was sending all my drivers. It was like 10 drivers to different locations, and they all were getting caught one at a time. And there was the first driver that I caught basically told them where the stash house was, where I was.
How do you know?
There was only 3 people that knew. And at the time, I remember like asking my lawyer, when I was locked up, who told, and I said that name, and he said, yeah, so.
Okay, so he told so the first guy, the first driver that got caught, immediately he said where the stash house was.
It took him like 12 hours of interrogation,
And then what happened?
Then I'm like in the house.
In the stash house.
In the stash house, I'm dealing with all the phones, and so I ran up to the stash house because I needed to do the deliveries myself. I got all these people waiting for me, and so I went over there. I grabbed some stuff, and then I go downstairs into the car, and I remember like this white dude. I'm in the South Bronx. There's no white people there except for cops, So I see this white dude, and he says, "This is Detective Joseph King from DEA. Your whole operation is done, Coss Marte." And he says my name, and I'm like, "What? Get the fuck out of here." I don't know what you're talking about. So I turned around on him. I see more officers just come out of nowhere quick and just grab me up and arrest me. And I remember having I had a M3 BMW convertible drop top right there. And then I had the Escalade right behind it. And then they went into the car and they started searching the car. And then, and they couldn't find anything on me. And I remember they were like, oh, we're getting a warrant for the house. We're going to search the house. So they got a warrant and they brought me inside and to the room and they said, where's the drugs at? And I was like, I don't sell drugs. What the fuck is you talking about? And all the drugs were in one box. And they were like, we know everything. And they opened up the box where I'm talking about, it was in a Jordan box, the 1.5 kilos. And then I had like 5 pounds of weed, like under the bed somewhere. And that was it. Bingo, and they took me in. And they brought me all the way downtown to PSA 4, which is like a Lower East Side precinct for the projects. And they fingerprint me. I remember like them clapping, when I went inside, because they were like, we got him. He's done, like it was like I was the biggest kingpin they seen or some shit,
How did you feel at the time?
I felt like it was over. I felt like it was over because it was my third felony. Third big felony. I already had like a drug possession B felony. Then I caught another C drug possession and intent to sell C felony. Did prison time, came home, finished parole, and then get locked up like literally after I got off parole, like a week later. And I knew I was going to be gone. This is like, they had these mandatory drug laws in New York that were the Rockefeller laws. So if you were like caught for the third time and you got caught for even the first time, if you get caught with over 2 ounces, you get life sentence behind your sentence, So I was facing 15 to life at the time.
Had this not gone through your mind before? Did you not know that this was a possibility?
Yeah, at the time I was just like, I felt like I was doing it so right. And dealing with, rich white people that never had to get stopped by cops, that lived in these neighborhoods that were incognito, these Wall Street guys, these big people that had a lot of money that you go to their houses, you pull out the drugs and they're just buying it for their friends, and it's like a normality and they're not getting caught,
So you thought that because your clientele had changed, you weren't selling on the corner anymore. Now you're selling to rich people, that there was a chance you wouldn't actually be caught.
Yeah, and I didn't get caught that way,
But it was because of that operation that you got caught. No.
Well, I got caught because of the dispatcher starting a new line,
right.
And he gave his card to the wrong person.
How did that happen?
So my dispatcher, who was like dealing with all the phones, he started a new phone number. And as one of the drivers was his cousin. So he was sending his cousin to these delivery sites and saying like, hey, there's a new card.
So he was basically starting a parallel.
Yeah, stealing my card. Yeah. And then I found out. So I took that phone away from him. And that phone was being tapped because he gave the card or they got into some trouble, and then that's how the investigation started.
Where's that guy now?
I don't know.
And so then you're realizing that this is not good for you, and there's a chance you might spend the rest of your life in prison.
Yep.
And then what happened?
Yeah, I remember going to court and they saying that they wanted to hit me with the Kingpin charges. That was the first thing, and then I remember like being in the cell when they and they gave me my wallet back, and inside my wallet. They took like all my cards and all that stuff away, but in my wallet I had a picture of my son, and I remember I had like 10 pieces of acid, and so I used to take LSD a lot at that time, and so I take all 10 pieces of acid, and so I'm like started to trip in the prison cell.
Oh shit!
And they take me to the interrogation room, and it's like the DA is there, they got like 5 officers just like in my face, like and I'm just laughing, like everything was just so funny, ridiculous, like And they basically threw me back in the cell, you know, because I was like, I'm not telling on nobody.
Right.
You know, I don't give a fuck. And I was like, give me life, whatever.
So, but why did you take 10 pieces of acid?
It was just a trip. You know, I was sitting in a prison cell where I didn't know when I was going to come out. So it was like, hey, let me get high and have a good time, you know, while I wait here for 24 hours, you know, to see a judge. You know?
So then they put you back in the cell after they realized they weren't going to have a serious conversation with you.
And they told the judge that, you know.
That he's not taking this case seriously, I guess.
No, because I told them while in the interrogation room, I was like, they were idiots that they gave me acid. I'm on acid now. So, the judge was like, oh, you think it's funny, right? You're on acid right now. Do you see my hands? You know, like joking on the stand. And I remember them saying like they threw like serious numbers, and I was like, whatever, you know. And I don't know, at the time I was just like so like entregado, like just like my mindset was just like, whatever, I'm done. Yeah, I'm this is my life, you know.
Yeah, defeated kind of, right?
Yeah.
And were your parents there?
No.
For the court? For any of it?
Yeah. My dad came for the time I was being sentenced. You know, my brother and my dad came.
What did he say to you? How did you feel about the fact that he was seeing this happen?
So I got 7 years in prison, you know, and I smiled at him from the court stand.
Because you thought you were going to get much more. Why did you end up only getting 7 years? It's not a lot considering the operation you were running. And if you did they charge you with a Kingpin charges? No, they didn't.
So Governor Spitzer at the time, I don't know if you know the New York politics, he cheated on his wife with a prostitute.
Yeah, I remember that so well.
So he was impeached, and then Governor Patterson came in, and then his first initiative was to reform the drug Rockefeller laws. So he changed that, and the mandatory guidelines were changed. So I didn't have to do life, you know, and so so basically I was gonna cop out to 12 years and 5 parole. And that's what my lawyer thought. Like, I'm speaking to my lawyer, he was like, yo, this is the minimum the best deal, 12 years, 5, you know. And so I get to court and they say, hey, we're gonna give you 7 years, you know, like basically times are changing. And I was like, oh my God. I like turned around, smiled at my dad, and he looked at me like, are you crazy? You know, you happy you got that, you know? But they didn't understand at the time that I was facing a lot more time.
Do you think he was disappointed at you? What do you think? How do you think he felt at that moment?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I never really thought about how he felt at that moment. You know, I think, I don't know.
What about your mom? Did you ever talk to her about it?
Yeah, I mean, when they were coming to visit me in prison, you know, they were disappointed, you know, but she always had hope. You know, I feel like she was my number one supporter in terms of like knowing that I could get back on track, you know.
Was there a part of you that, I mean, I'm sure there was, right, that felt bad about that? Just about what you're making your parents go through after all their hard work, making sure they would come to the United States to provide a better life for you guys and all of that. Like, what was going through your head?
Yeah, you know, in the beginning, I didn't care, you know, but when I like found out I was able to get a second chance at life, you know, like that I knew that I was gonna come home. Right, that's when I really started changing my mindset, you know, in terms of like thinking about other people, you know. And I remember like my mom, like, you know, taking those 9-hour bus rides to prison and bringing my son with me, you know, and like seeing my son like crying in the visiting rooms, and that's the worst and most difficult thing, you know, to like tell your kid, like, I can't go with you, you know, and them desperately saying, why not, you know? So.
How old was your kid?
2 to 6, you know.
So you were in prison 4 years in the end, right? You were sentenced to 7,
out.
you were there for 4. And your son was 2 when you first went to prison. How did it do? And you were, that was your only son at the time?
Yeah.
And this was somebody you'd married, or what was
I got
your
married in
relationship?
Rikers Island.
You did with the mother of your child.
Yeah. So we were engaged before
Uh-huh.
I was locked up, and then we decided to get married while I was in jail.
And so you were sent to Rikers?
Yeah.
Was that where you were sent to with
Yeah.
with the 7-year prison sentence?
No, so Rikers is a jail, so that's like your holding
Right.
cell, So
Yeah.
I was sitting there until I was sentenced. So I was there for a year before I went upstate.
And then what was Rikers like?
Shit, at the time it was it's crazy. Like gangs are running it. You're not a gang member, or like I'm lucky that I'm Dominican, because at least like the Dominican gang like took me. But I always told the gang members, they were like, yo, so I've been approached multiple times to join a gang, and I'm like, how much you guys paying? And they'll laugh at me, and I'm like, I'm not joining a gang if y'all not paying. I'm not doing free work, because I just seen so many young kids fall into that trap where they send them on dummy missions. We call it dummy missions, where like, that you see this kid that's 14, 15 years old that's coming into a brand new jail, and you see an 18-year-old, 20-year-old kid, send them on, you got to cut this guy, to be with us, and that kid is like, well, the pressure of that, right? That feeling, right? And they got to do it, because if they don't do it, it's going to be done to them, so it's crazy.
And that didn't happen to you? Like they didn't put that pressure on you?
Well, I got into fights, when I was a kid and early on, because I was not in gangs and stuff like that.
Because you were not in gangs?
Yeah, I used to tell, there was this thing, like a statement we used to say, like, and it was like a crew at one time it became like NFL, neutral for life, and
and that's what you were.
And I used to state that, when people used to approach me, like, I'm NFL,
And was it mainly because you didn't see a business in that? Because it wasn't your main goal was to make money, and there was no money to be made from these gangs, so why join them, right?
Yeah, and I mean the gangs have their own, drug, whatever, but I was never involved with none of that, I never saw any ROI in that.
You mentioned that you were, when I asked you about protection, when you were with making all that money in cash and saving it in shoeboxes, and you said that you guys were your own protection. Did you always carry a gun?
At home, not at my mom's house, well, I did as a kid when I was very young, but I always had something stashed at that time,
But when you were selling drugs on the corner, I'm assuming you also had a gun.
Or in the mailbox,
Right.
like when we were on the block, it was like nearby, but it wouldn't be on us because you don't want to get locked up. In New York, there was just so much strict laws on guns, being held. And so like we would get stopped consistently, right? Like, so it was up the block or, 20 feet, 50 feet away from us.
And that was to be used in case somebody came to try to rob you or steal your cash or your money or your drugs. And did you ever have to use it?
Well, yeah, not really, but yeah.
Am I making you talk too much?
I'm not going to say nothing. No.
Can you still get in trouble for things that you would tell me here, you think?
I don't know. I don't know, I mean, it's, I guess there's a stipulation, right? On New York law or I don't know about federal law, right? Like, but there's 20, I guess 10 years, 20 years. This happened I got locked up 2009.
Yeah, it's better if we don't take that chance. But this was not part of your case. Like gun violence wasn't at all part of your case.
They were trying to find guns. I remember they were trying to buy guns through the process while they didn't. So in New York State, the Kingpin law, you had to get caught and have a certain amount. And sell a certain amount. So when I went to the law library in Rikers Island, I was reading what a kingpin is. So you had to like sell over 2 ounces of cocaine or heroin to an officer directly. The 37 sales that we did were so minor. When it came back, it didn't add to that amount. So I brought that up to the lawyer, and then they dropped it down to like a 8-2. Felony.
Yeah, because the kingpin charges are more directed towards like big drug traffickers,
Yeah.
right? Bringing large amounts of cocaine.
But if they would have like probably done 100 buys, then they would have got there. You know.
So Rikers was awful. Was it immediately violent? As soon as you got in, you realized that there was. Did you have to be violent? At all
I
inside?
mean, yeah. You know, there's the first time I went in, it was different from going in like in 2005, 2006, you know, then 2009. At the time, I remember like going in and it was just like very gladiator school. You know, everybody got a shank. Everybody, you know, get ready if anything goes down. You know, you don't know when the searches are going to go down. You got ESU, Emergency Service Unit, coming in, raiding your cell, throwing everything around. You know.
So you were given a shank when you got in?
No, you make one. You know.
How did you make one?
Fan blade, you know, or fan stick. You know, you got like, there's a lot of ways, you know, or you crack a piece of metal, you know, or I had a scalpel. So the scalpels were good because the scalpels don't ring in the metal detectors, you know, but they're like this small, but as sharp as hell, and you wrap them up in a piece of little cardboard, nice hard paper, and you keep it inside you, you know, and
inside it's the pocket knife, they call it, right?
Or you cheek it, yeah.
Or you cheek it.
Yeah.
This we're talking about inside your butt, right? That's where you hide it.
Yep.
Yeah. We had a guest here, Fabian Alamar, who told us all about it.
Yeah.
It was actually part of the trailer for the podcast for a long time. It's this description of the pocket knife.
Yeah.
Not pocket knife, sorry. It's called a
prison pocket.
Prison pocket. Prison pocket, of course, makes much more sense. Prison pocket, yeah. So you had it too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of raids were coming in. You had to throw everything in your prison pocket, you know, because they'll strip you naked, which is illegal now. They used to put us all in dorm areas, in the big prison dorm areas, strip us naked, facing each other, you know, and it was just like demeaning, and we would have to have our hands on top of our heads, you know, and then squat and cough in front of our office, turn around, you know, and there was always like, I remember like a lot of Muslim guys, you know, it was against their religion to do stuff like that, so they would fight, you know, and they would, they were like, I'm not stripping, you know, and I remember like things changing over time where like they had to take people aside and, you know, have them search in separate rooms and stuff like that because of it.
Wow. Wow. And then you were sent upstate to another prison after Rikers?
That was gladiator school, you know, because it was a prison that was mostly youth, you know. So in New York State, it was like the second to last state to have like youth with adults. So it was like 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old kids. At the time, I was 24, and they used to call me OG, you know, because I was 24, you know, and these kids were doing crazy stuff, you know, and like I said, those dummy missions, you know, I've seen a lot of them get into a lot of trouble because of that, you know.
Were you respected in prison because you were older, or was there?
Oh, well, I remember
hierarchy?
I got into a fight like the first day I got into prison because of the TV, you know, so everybody has their own chair, you know, so you have your own chair tied to your own cell. So you take that chair and you go watch TV or you eat in that chair, whatever. So I bring my chair out, you know, to the day room setting, you know, a setting where like everybody's watching TV. I leave it there. I go to the bathroom. I come back. I see this guy has his feet up on my chair. And, you know, that means one thing, that somebody's testing you or not, you know. And I was like, yo, get off my chair. And he's like, what are you going to do? So I grabbed the chair and I threw it at him. And then we go to the bathroom. We fight it out. And I remember, like, that first day, I cut it. Like, I didn't cut him with a knife or anything, but he had, like, a cut in his eye. And one of the guards, like, you know, blew the whistle or whatever, you know, set the alarm. And so a whole bunch of guards came, and I like ran into a stall cleaning my body, because you can't have any marks, you know, because the first thing that they do is looking at, you know, if you got any marks on your hands, you know, so I'm running it in cold water. And then I go back to the unit because they're like, all inmates back to their cells, you know, so I go back, you know, to my spot and take off your shirt, check you around. But the kid that had that mark, they took him to the box, you know.
To the solitary, and he didn't rat you out.
He didn't rat me out
because that is the one of the big rules in prison, right? Is you don't rat out, because then he could have gotten into serious trouble, right? He'd be seen as a rat.
Yeah.
And so they never found out it was you.
Mm-mm.
Did you ever go? Oh yeah, you did go to solitary too.
I gained respect.
You did. You gained respect because of that.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first moments where they were sort of testing.
That was the first day.
That was the first day.
First day.
Wow.
You know, this was J2 in Green Correctional Facility.
What's J2?
The unit. They used to call it the jungle dorm. You know, so it was like the jungle. You know, a lot of people that ended up in J2 were people that were being released from the box from like previous fights. Wow. So it was crazy in there.
So it was the most violent unit, you would say?
Yeah, at that time, yeah.
Why were you sent there?
I don't know. I was just sent there, you know.
Were you scared?
Nah, you know, just awareness, you know, more like alert, you know, and mind your own business, you know. Like you don't want to, like, when you walk down that tier, you know, you don't want to look at people's cells. You're looking straight, you know.
Were there gangs in that prison as well?
Oh yeah, a lot of.
And were you also? Did you get into with the? Was there a Dominican?
Yeah.
Gang?
Yeah.
What are they called?
Trinitarios. You know, everybody knows that there's a lot of history and stuff like that in New York of them being like the largest Spanish gang. You know, like California, you have like whatever, I don't know, the MS and all the stuff here, but over there is mostly like Puerto Rican, Dominican gangs on the Spanish side. You know, there is MS and all that stuff, but a very small scale.
And did you have to? Were there drugs being sold inside?
Yeah, I brought drugs in.
You did? How?
Yeah, through my prison pocket.
that little thing is really useful.
At Rikers Island, you know.
Yeah.
Just like getting it in visiting rooms, you know, getting friends to come, bring you stuff.
Also using their own private wallet, or how did they smuggle it in?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
Was it easy at the time to smuggle drugs in to prison?
Never easy, but doable. You know.
Yeah, I always ask this. I'm always fascinated by contraband in prison, because I don't think most people realize that actually prisons are the biggest black markets in the world. Like there's more drugs sold in prison than
I was smoking
in a lot
more
of
weed at one point in Rikers Island than, you know, than outside. You know, like I had a whole unit, just like we were smoking like 30 people at a time doing ciphers.
And so it was family members, and then were the correctional officers as well bringing stuff in to sell?
Yeah.
That happens a lot, right?
Yeah. Well, they tried to set me up at one point when in Rikers Island. And
how so?
They so I got caught like bringing in weed, not bringing in weed, but I got caught smoking, and one of the officers like said, "Where's the weed at?" I already flushed it, you know, so he couldn't find it, and then he was the one bringing in the weed, but he took it out of my pillow. And he said, "You had an ounce of weed." So he brought me to the box for a second. They were interrogating me, all this stuff. I was like, "That's not mine. You know that shit ain't mine."
Shit.
You know? And then they basically, like, he started bringing in weed for me. He wanted to see if he could trust, you know, that I was not going to say anything, you know?
Huh. Wow. Okay. So he basically planted drugs on you. And that essentially you ended up in solitary for that, but he was testing you to see if you wouldn't rat him out, because you knew it had been him.
Yeah.
And so once he could trust you, then he became the guy that brought in weed for you.
Yeah. Because I know he was bringing the weed for somebody else, you know.
Do you think the other correction? Do you think it's like because it happens so often? Is it sort of does everybody knows that this is happening and just nobody cares and these correctional officers just don't get in
No,
trouble, or what's the deal?
I mean, it was hidden, like when, they call it the white shirts, like the lieutenants, the captains, in the correctional system, people like get alert, they don't want, but so a lot of these guards grow up in the same neighborhoods as us, right? They're living in the same neighborhoods, so it's hard to like say like, yo, don't do this for me, or you start off with like, yo, bring me a pack of ketchup, and the pack of ketchup becomes a bacon, egg, and cheese one day, and then the bacon, egg, and cheese becomes
Right.
give me a joint, and then it becomes like, yo, my friend's gonna meet you. I'm sending you a Western Union, payment numbers, and that was it,
They also, a lot of them don't get paid very well, right? And so this is sort of a way to supplement their income.
In New York, they get paid, in the city, they get paid pretty well, I think, and people don't realize how many people are being released from prison in New York State and how many people are being rotated in the system. There's 188,000 people being released from New York State every year.
Oh, shit.
Compared, how much the country?
I know there's
650,000 people are released from the whole country
every year.
Wow. So New York State,
Right.
188,000, 650, right? That's a lot of people.
That is a lot of people.
That are being rotated in, and a lot of relationships being built while they're incarcerated,
Right.
And a lot of money.
Yeah. So you had weed? Did you start a business in prison with the drugs? Were you making money from it as well?
Yeah. Because inside you sell like a spider leg for $10, or $5 a commissary, depending on the size of the joint. But like the joint is so like this amount, like that amount of weed is $5. That's $5.
Versus what, like $1 outside?
This is nothing. You can't even sell that outside. That's like a penny,
Yes. Yeah.
That's like
Right.
stuff you find on the floor,
Right. And so you were making money there as well.
Yeah.
And then what happened? Yeah, tell me about your transformation in prison. So what happened to you?
So I went into prison weighing a lot of being pretty heavy, So in Rikers Island, I was just like eating junk and not knowing where my health was. And so when I went upstate, the doctors take blood, first examination you see in a long time, because now you're property of the state, And so they tell me about my cholesterol issues, and they told me I could probably die within 5 years. And I was like, what? I'm 24, like how am I gonna die? And they were like, yo, if you keep eating or not exercising, and like your levels are really bad. And I was like, so what do I gotta do? And so recommended exercising. They put me on the special diet, basically like they don't feed you, and I started working out obsessively, so I lost over 70 pounds in 6 months, just running the prison yard, going back to my cell, working out, and just consistently doing it.
And wait, you got other people doing it with you too, right?
Yeah, and so I had one of the guys that was like, pretty big inside, asked me to like train him eventually, and I helped him lose 80 pounds, and then I helped a lot of other people, work out. And so we would form like a big circle in the prison yard. Somebody would get in the middle. We're doing like burpees, jumping jacks, push-ups, all types of stuff together, And it built a real camaraderie, and I didn't think I was gonna start a business behind it. But towards the end of my incarceration, I ended up in solitary, and this is where I had my spiritual awakening, where I feel like I changed my life around.
First off, let me ask you, how did you end up in solitary then?
So towards the end of my incarceration, I qualified for this special program, and I did the special program before. It's called SHOCK. So it's like ex-Marines turned correctional officers. So they beat the crap out of you for 6 months, and they let you go home 3 years before your sentence. And so...
Wait, what?
Yes. So I had 7 years, right? In 7 years, you have to do, as a nonviolent crime, you have to do like 6 years.
Minimum, yeah.
Minimum. And then I got to come home early. So, but 3 years before that, 6 years, I qualified for this program called Shock. So Shock, they bring you in there, you do 6 months of this program, and then you skip from doing all that time. And that's how I got out in 4 years. But while I was in the program...
But what is the program exactly?
Ex-Marines turned correctional officers. So it's a boot camp. You know, you wake up at 5:30 in the morning. Yeah, in 8 minutes, you have to brush your teeth, take a shit, take a piss, have your hospital corners on your bed, and fully be in a position of attention, you know, on a countdown to work out for an hour and a half, and then eat, and then do slave labor in the middle of a field or cemetery in New York State.
Wow. And so you did this for 3 years?
I did that for 6 months. Well, I did it for before my previous prison sentence to save myself.
You had done it too. And what are they trying to accomplish? Just like, it's a way of reform, they think? It's like building discipline and hard work?
Both.
Is that the idea?
Both. You know, all the ideas above. You know, you start off with like 60 people in a group, and you end up being like 20 people when you graduate it. But it's a hands-on program. You know, at the time they were, I seen people's ribs being broken, nose being broken, like they beat you down. You know, I remember like walking a mile on our knees, you know, in little pebble rocks, and then our knees are bleeding, and I'm just like popping out little rocks out of my knees. And then going into the mess hall where you're supposed to eat, and then you have to sit on metal stools on your knees and eat for like 10 seconds. You know, and if you can't eat in 10 seconds,
you're not gonna eat.
You're not gonna eat. You know, and so you're like swallowing some shit, and if you're still chewing, they're like making you fucking throw it up. You know, and torture.
Is it good? Do you think it's?
There was certain parts of the program that I really like respect in terms of like time management, responsibility, cleanliness, you know, and stuff like that. But then there was like some stuff that was just over excessive.
Yeah, it sounds so brutal.
And it's like very racist. I had very racist guys. Like these officers had swastika signs on their arms. Like there was this guy named Iceman. He had a black baby with a tree being hung on his arm. Yeah.
And this is allowed?
Oh yeah. There's upstate New York, man. There's 2026. Everything's allowed. Trump did it. You know?
We can start a whole conversation
with
that.
You know, like that nothing's impossible.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And wait, this was when? What year was this when you were doing this?
2012.
That's fucking crazy. And does Shock program still exist?
Yeah, it still exists.
It does.
They've been through so many lawsuits for so many abusive incidents in there that things have cooled down. But
the idea behind it is that they are basically working on the incarcerated population, making them better human beings. Is that the idea?
Certain people, and then certain people are like, you niggers, spics, you know, get to work, you know, get in the field, you know, and like do slave labor.
Because it's also, it's free labor for the prison, I guess, or for the state.
I was getting paid 7 cents an hour, so it was not.
To do what?
To mow lawns, clean dams, build stuff, you know,
right.
roofing.
So it's essentially almost free labor, right?
I'm joking. Yeah, it's free labor, but you know, 7 cents is crazy. You know, I was released with $40 in a bus ticket, as many inmates in prison are in New York State. You know, and what do you do? It's $40, right? You 9-hour bus ride. You stop halfway. You go to McDonald's. You spend $20. Right. You get on the MTA. You spend $5.
Yeah.
You buy a snack at night. You spend another $5. You wake up with $10 in New York City.
What do you do with that?
Yeah. Cup of coffee, you're done.
Yeah, so I want to talk about your release, but I also want to talk about your time in solitary, because that's where a lot of your change happened. Because I do think that the vast majority of Americans have no idea what is happening inside some of these prisons and how brutal, dehumanizing, and horrible shit that you wouldn't expect would even be allowed. It's insane. And a lot of it is also the labor part of it, because the state is making a lot of money from this essentially free slave labor, like you call it. Yeah, it's fucking crazy.
It's a money-making machine, and I describe it as like you know, it's slavery time, and you know, the blacks like not picking up cotton anymore. Like, who's gonna go back to the fields? Not this white rich farm owner, right? Like, let's lock them up, the same people, and put them back in the same field. If you go to Angola, right,
State prison,
same picture, right? They take they have a picture that's black and white, right? That when it was a slave plantation owned land, and it looks exactly the same with the officer with the gun and a horse. Yeah, you know, it's crazy.
But this time it's forced labor from prison.
Exactly.
Inmates,
and the same, you know, ancestors. I met like inmates that were there. They were like, "Oh, my grandfather worked this plantation." You know.
Yeah. So then, why did you end up in solitary then?
So towards the end of my incarceration, I ended up in this program.
In the shock.
And and then I ended up like getting this like random drug test, you know, while I was in this program. So they sent me down to the medical unit. I didn't see a dentist for like 3 years. So I'm like, I'm thinking I'm about to be released in like a couple months. And I was finally getting my dental call. So I like run to the bathroom, brush my teeth. You know, I run down to the medical unit, and it was like, this is a surprise drug test. And I was like, what do you mean? So I'm not using drugs. And it was like, whatever, just get on the wall. So they put me on the wall. They started searching me aggressively. And this officer basically like went in between my legs and was like, told me like I moved my body a little bit. And he was like, don't fucking move, inmate. And he punched me behind my head and knocked me to the ground. I turned around on him and he said, get down, inmate. And I had my hands up. I was like, yo, what? And he presses the pin, which is this button in his walkie-talkie. And that button goes off. The whole alarm for the whole prison goes down. You got to face down on the ground. And I'm begging to him. I was like, why did you have to press? You didn't have to press that. And he just kept screaming, get down, inmate, get down. And I went down, and about half a dozen officers come through that door. They beat me with batons, shackle me up, and they take me to solitary.
For what?
For refusing to a drug test and also attempting to assault an officer. And so I'm in solitary confinement. I'm like pacing back and forth because I had a couple months left. Like, my family thinks I'm coming home early, you know. And I remember like just sweating, you know, because it was like 110 degrees in that cell. It was a hot box. Like, there's no air ventilation. Like, you have to like put your nose in between the crack of the cell, you know, because the cell door slides open like this. So like you get a little crack. And that's how you like get some air, you know. And then the dribble of the water that is coming out of it, you know, the sink, it's like not even coming. It doesn't even have an arch. It's just like going straight down, you know. So like you're like, you know, sipping water like this, you know, and like wetting your little towel, you know, and just putting it back on your head, you know, and just being naked, you know. And so I remember like sitting in there a couple days. And I started writing this letter to my family, and I told them like everything that happened. I needed help and all this stuff. And I remember like sitting there, and I couldn't send out this letter because you only could get a stamp after 30 days in solitary. And so I enclosed the letter, and I'm like, I'll send it after, you know. And I remember like my sister finding out I was in solitary because my family called the prison and they didn't hear from me, you know. And so she tells me, you know, and writes me a letter and says, you know, to read Psalm 91 from the Bible. And my sister's like super religious, like she's Catholic, you know, you don't even know. She like reads the Bible for, you know, for
pleasure
every day, you know, for pleasure, for sure, you know. And so I take that letter and I throw it in the corner of my cell, and I'm like, fuck that, I don't need Jesus. I need a lawyer. I need to get out of this bitch, you know. And I'm sitting there sweating. Just a couple days go by, and I remember having this like Bible that she gave me on early in my incarceration. And in prison, we inmates use our Bible as like an address book, you know. So I had like all the people that I met from the cartel, you know, and like
We're inside the prison.
that were inside the prison that I was gonna connect with. So you know, and originally my idea was like, I'm gonna become a better drug dealer. I got caught because of this, you know, and now I gotta fix this to, you know, be better.
But I'm
and
not
that's
gonna
what
stop,
I used
but
that
I'm not
Bible.
gonna stop, but I'm not gonna stop selling drugs.
And you know, and what's funny is that I'm actually today a better drug dealer. You know, still. You know,
we'll get there. We'll get there.
But you know, I take this Bible and I opened it up to Psalm 91, which states, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of my God and my I will say to my God, He is my God and my fortress, my God whom I trust." And I remember like reading those words and a stamp falling in between the Bible and I needed a stamp, right, to send out this message that I had this letter written for my family for so long. And this stamp fell out of my Bible and I was like, what? Like, how, you know, and before you get in there, they like search your Bible. They did this, like they split the book cover open and shake it. And that little stamp changed my life, you know, because it gave me so much chills in my body. It gave me goosebumps that night. I remember like having an outer body experience that I don't tell many people about, you know, in that cell, you know, and I don't know, I cried in that cell and I read the Bible from front to back while I was there. And I'm not a religious person. I don't go to church every week, you know, but I started really understanding what it meant, right? And that's when I really started feeling regret, you know, for all the things that I've done, all the people that I've hurt. And I said I wanted to do something right, you know, when I come back, you know, and that's where ConBody started, you know, and I remember like in that prison cell, like hearing the guards scream out and the workouts and stuff like that, you know, and I through the window and I just started writing a workout routine, you know, and then I wrote out like, you said business plan. In the beginning, it was not a business plan. It was like I wrote out what I wanted to do when I came home in terms of my workout routine, in terms of where I was going to do it and stuff like that.
So it's more like a life plan.
A life plan, basically, yeah.
So a few questions. Where do you think the stamp came from? I mean, it was inside the Bible. Do you think that was just happened to be there and they didn't catch it? Or it wasn't something, it wasn't your sister who sent it when she told you? No, it was just happened to be there. It was, who knows where it came
there. I didn't touch the Bible for 2 years, 3 years. You know, I don't know. It was just sitting there, you know.
And this was important to you because you really wanted this letter to get to your family. What was in the letter that was so important for you to get there? You wanted to tell them that you were...
Well, that I didn't want a new charge. I didn't want to do... I was facing 3 more years in prison because of this situation. So, you know, I'm like...
So they were going to get a lawyer for you.
I was trying to get them to get a lawyer or get some sort of help or contact the prison or, you know, I started writing like the investigator... the IG officer, which is like the investigation group that investigates the police and all that stuff. So
and what, when you started reading the Bible, since you're not a religious person, what do you think in the Bible resonated with you? What were the messages that sort of?
I think I think the biggest thing was just like, I don't know, you know, the book of Job, the book of Paul. You know,
but what were
just like always continues to do the right thing and live the right path, and things will just work out no matter what, right? Like, you know, food will be provided, clothing will be provided, shelter will be provided. You know, if we stick on our process and trust that process, we don't have nothing to worry about. You know, God is gonna provide if we just do the right thing and treat people the right way, and that was just like my way of like trusting the process. You know, and that's how I like broke down like Psalm 91. It talks about like stomping over like the cobra and like you're gonna have all these evil things and so many arrows will strike you, but the arrow that's coming down won't strike you, you know, because you trust the process and you continue to do the right thing, you know, even when it's the hardest times in your life, you know.
And I guess you hadn't really thought about it that way because in your experience, trusting the process hadn't led you anywhere, right? And I mean,
for me, it was all instant gratification, right? There was no process, you know. It was just like I gave you $20, you give me a bag. You know, the instant gratification was the money right away, right? So there was nothing that I had to like plan out or work on to get to a certain point, right?
And also, I'm imagining, as somebody who grew up with your parents working so hard day and night to provide for their family, like seeing, and they trusted the process, right? And seeing that for them, trusting the process didn't get them anything. Right.
But I also see them as like my mom as the most successful person, right? You know, today she's 73. She does 100 burpees a day. She, you know, goes takes her vacations whenever she wants to. You know, is just recently retired. You know, but still works. You know, doing a whole bunch of stuff. You know, but like that's real, you know, success for me, right? Living a long, healthy life. You know, and that's it. And she only made $15 an hour. At her highest peak, you know.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's a real revelation to have, and then so that you sort of decided, okay, I'm going to change my life around this, and it was the first time that you thought, okay, there is perhaps a future where I'm not selling drugs, even though you ended up selling drugs anyway. But,
and I vowed like I was not going to hurt people anymore. You know, that I felt like with the healthy workout regimen that I was going to help people, and that's how I was going to provide my give back to society in a certain way. So I ended up doing another like year behind that situation in prison. And then I ended up coming home back to the Lower East Side, back to my mom's couch, you know, and I would remember like coming home, and the first day I went out to the park and I started working out, and I took this broken piece of pipe and I started doing pull-ups in the corner with it. And it started attracting people, you know, like just people that were running. I'm like, hey, you want to work out? You know, and it was a whole different Lower East Side, right? From like, you know, the recession time in like 2008, I got locked up early 2009. And then like coming out in 2013 where I'm seeing like white women running around with yoga pants, you know, and Instagram is now, and
a thing.
Facebook a thing. And, you know, I got locked up with MySpace, you know. I remember like my username Cost the Boss, you know, at the time. Yeah, with a D though, you know. And so, it was a crazy time to come out and then like go right into fitness. It felt like, you know, perfect service to sell, you know.
You talked about how you I think most people know this, but when you come out of prison, when you have a record, it's really hard to find a job, right? And when you came out, I'm sure the same thing for you, right? So what did you do? Like, how did you survive the first few months out of prison?
So I was like nonstop. I went to like Midtown and I was applying for jobs, and at the time, you know, it was like every application, you know, you don't apply online anymore. Like you don't apply in a piece of paper, right, anymore. So like I'm going up with a resume, I'm going dressing up with a, you know, suit, tie, whatever. And then I'm going to like H&M, Macy's, whatever it is. And any retail store, any store I could get, and just like filling out these job applications. And it said, first name, last name, have you ever been convicted of a crime? And I would have to check that box, you know. And I remember like handing that application over to those store managers and them giving me like a sign of like, we're going to call you back. And I knew reading their body language that they were never going to call me back because they saw that top line, right? And it was just, I was resilient. I was nonstop. And I remember like waking up in the morning, 5:30 again, doing 2 workouts in the park, you know, then like trying to find any job. And then I was actually working for my uncle off the books because I'm a legal citizen, and then my uncle was like working as an immigrant, illegal citizen as under somebody else's social security at the time, but he's getting paid $15 or $12 an hour, and he's paying me $5 an hour to do the work for him, you know. So as a legal citizen in America, readapting back into society, I had to operate illegal, which is crazy.
So crazy.
You know, and so I was doing cleaning jobs, I was doing moving jobs, I was doing anything in between. And then I ended up getting like this internship in Goodwill Industries where I basically like lied on the application. I didn't check the box. And I remember like I was doing an internship and working there. Nobody knew I was incarcerated, you know, and so I was just showing up every day, helping out, doing clerical work, copies, whatever. And the director asked me after they were gonna give me the job. They were like, "Hey, you missed something in your application. Do you have anything to tell us?" And I was like, as a kid, I made a lot of mistakes. You know, you don't even have room for all the stuff in those 3 lines for what I have to say. But, you know, she said she was going to give me a chance. And she gave me a chance. And then I was hired as a resume writer. So I was like typing 40 resumes a day for like people that were in like NYCHA, or people that needed jobs, unemployment, or people that were coming out of prison. And did that for full-time job, and then my side hustles, and then eventually went on to do my full-time job as a fitness trainer.
And so tell me, so ConBody started with you basically with a makeshift bar at the park and getting people to join you. And then how did it grow?
So it went from like a park, renting out little small ballet studios, because that first year, you know, I thought everybody was resilient and working out. So I had no indoor location, and it was freezing outside. So I'm like showing up and nobody's showing up, you know. And I showed up every day. I didn't care, you know. I was just on a different mindset. But then I found like these small little ballet studios that I started renting in 440 Lafayette Street. And then I eventually moved on to like another small little space behind a preschool. And then we got kicked out of the preschool because I told them I was doing Pilates, and then they found out it was ConBody, and that, and so I was subleasing it, and so they kicked me out. And then I tried to find another location, and throughout this process, this is why I'm in LA, because our documentary was in Sundance, and then the director, it just got acquired by Criterion, and so they just featured it in UCLA.
That's great. Now. So what the doc is about ConBody?
5 episodes about ConBody, me coming out of prison. She met me like a couple months out of prison, and then started recording, and then the people that I've hired throughout that process.
So tell me, so a lot of the business plan, it's a fitness classes, but you actually, the fitness instructors are actually former convicts, right?
Yeah. So my whole model when I started writing my actual real business plan was to like hire people coming out of the prison system to teach the fitness classes as a prison style boot camp. You know, so it's all calisthenics, no equipment, cardio, calisthenic workout, 45 minutes.
And part of it is because you wanted to give people who come out of prison a chance, because a lot of them, it's really hard. Like it was for you, really hard to get a job. So you wanted to give people a chance to.
Yeah, and it happened like pretty organically. You know, it was part of my business plan, but at the time I didn't have no money to hire anybody. And then eventually when I was sitting in the resume lab, this guy who I was introduced to that needed a resume, did 14 years in prison and 7 years in solitary. And he was my first hire. And it was just like, as a contractor in the beginning, and then eventually became one of my first employee. And then it started growing from there. Today, I mean, I probably hired a couple hundred people coming out of the prison system.
Wow.
You know, I have like 70 people on the team.
No way.
You know,
that's incredible.
And 4 different businesses.
Wow. So okay, so you all those people, not just for ConBody, for your other businesses as well. How many studios do you operate at from ConBody?
Just one now.
And in New York.
Yeah. And right over the dispensary. So
So tell me about the dispensary. So then you thought there's a business when marijuana became legal in New York, was it? Or tell me.
Yeah. So in like 2018, 2017, I was approached by a friend who got one of the first Massachusetts cannabis licenses. This guy was like, used to buy weed off of me 20 years ago. I was trafficking to like Rhode Island. And then he's like, yo, I seen you on the news. I seen you run a business and you got ConBody, and I don't know what to do with the business, and you know about weed more than I do. And he was like, oh, can you be the CEO of the company? I was like, I don't know how I'm going to be the CEO, but fuck it. You're going to pay me. I'm going to take it, you know, I'll figure it out, you know? So eventually he brought my paperwork to get into the system over there, but they didn't allow people with criminal records. So people that sold weed couldn't sell weed legally, you know? So I remember at the time, like being discouraged about it, you know, I did social media posts about it, and then like, speaking on panels about it, you know, and like advocating like this is so messed up, right? Like how can the people that got harmed the most not
Now
like
profit
reap the
from it. Right.
benefits from it, you know?
Yeah, they're being sort of shunned to the edges of this big news business opportunity.
Yeah.
The same happened, I'm sure you know, in California. I did a story about the black market for weed here in California because
that,
actually it grew exponentially even after legalization. Most people don't know this, but a lot of the people that I ended up speaking with were people who had spent time in prison for you know, for smoking a blunt or for selling a few ounces of weed, and then when they actually wanted to turn their businesses into a legal business, they were not allowed to, which is incredibly unfair.
Yeah, and I know people that did it and then also got federally indicted in California and got prison time, you know, for it because it's still federally legal. You know, but after like when Obama came in, he said, don't touch the states that are legal. And that's when the federal enforcements, you know, really stopped.
Yeah.
But now, you know, it's crazy, right? Like for me, somebody that's been like stopped by NYPD and all this stuff, we were granted that First Avenue, right? So what New York State did was like wrote a law, the MRTA, to state that the people that were most affected should reap the benefits and the equal amounts of ownership should be divided at least 50%.
And that was written by you. I mean, you were the one,
I didn't write it.
No, you didn't write the law, but you were the engine behind the law. Like the idea, you were the one who started this idea?
No, it was more just like advocating, and then there was groups pushing for it. So in 2021, you know, I were helping these groups and all that stuff, but there was a lot of people behind before me.
Was New York the first state to ever do that?
Yes. So New York State was the first to ever have people that were convicted to go first before these big multi-state medical operators, even though the medical operators were already operating on the medical side, but they couldn't go into the recreational side. So the law was basically written to state that they had to wait 2 years after we got our license. And then they sued the state and they got those 2 years drops and they got to skip the line anyway. But
because that would help you guys
capture market share. Yeah, because that's what first to market is always the ones that win in this cannabis game.
Right. And obviously you can't compete against these big corporations because they have all the money, this large money that they can invest in these businesses and really grow it much faster than you guys could.
Well, they race to the bottom. You know, so basically, I'm gonna give you an example, right? Today I buy, let's say, a eighth for $10 and I sell it for $20, right? That same eighth that I buy for $10, they're the only ones that are allowed to grow it and sell it. So they could grow it and for $1 and still sell it for 20.
Right.
Now they'll go to my store and say like, hey, I'll give you, I'll beat the farmers' prices of $10. I'll give you everything for $5, right? And so I'm like, great, I'll take all the stuff, you know, like this is way cheaper, you know. And so, but then when all the farmers are gone and they out of business and only the medical operators are operating and you're still buying it for $5, tomorrow they raise the price at you at $11. And then your profit margins are getting thinner and thinner. And then they're like, oh, you don't got no money to operate anymore? Well,
we'll buy you out.
We'll buy you out for pennies on the dollar, you know? And so that's what I've been explaining with the regulators in New York now is that we're creating like a different spreadsheet, you know? And so we put regulations in terms of like how much you could discount, you know, and how much shelf space they're allowed in their own stores as medical operators. So making a more even playing field, and New York State is the only state that's been today operating in a profit in cannabis. You know, every state has failed because of the drive to the race to the bottom by these big companies.
By these big
And
corporations.
So, yeah.
And your business is called ConBud.
ConBud.
How many dispensaries do you own?
3 locations now. I'm not fully owner. I have partners on those, but I have one that I own, which is in the Lower East Side. Where
Is it crazy that you're back in the Lower East Side selling weed, but now legally?
3 blocks from my mom's house, like 3 blocks from my weed block, 2 blocks from where I got arrested the first time, like it's, and then on Main Street, like I'm on Delancey and Orchard Street,
Wow.
which is like huge corner, and it's unbelievable, Sometimes I feel like I'm living some sort of a dream, but then it's just so much work that I'm like, every day feels like the first day,
Yeah, you wake up happy going to work. Like this is running a business. I mean, you've been running a business essentially since you were like 13 or 14 years old, right?
Yeah, and then I got people that were selling with me 20 years ago now selling with me again in the shop.
That's awesome.
Guys that I was sending commissary money to prison are now working with me in the shop. We also like worked on advocating to change the law in terms of having probation and parolees to work with us because that was against the law. And so we amended the law to do that. And now I have parole officers coming in, and like say checking up on, employees, and it's, and we build a relationship with like so much mutual respect, and it's, and thank God we've been able to like create a lot of great trust.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I remember I wrote down something, which was that one of the things you realized when you were in prison was that the prisons are full of people with a lot of talent, right? And there's actually a lot of entrepreneurs there, right? And these black markets in general, whether it's drugs or whatever it is, it's filled with people that are really skilled at selling and distributing, and
a lot of hustlers.
Right? Yeah. And it's something that I've noticed too in my reporting throughout, covering black markets. Like I'm constantly talking to these people that are geniuses in their fields, but their field isn't legal. Yeah, but if they had the opportunity, if they had the opportunity to work in a legal field, they'd be like CEOs and whatnot of these big corporations. Yeah. And so I was researching this because I was wondering if there was like a stat for this or any study been done on this. And it turns out that there was an economist at the UC Santa Cruz that ran the numbers and found 3 overlapping traits between drug dealers and successful entrepreneurs. 1 is a dislike of having a boss. That's good. 2, an appetite for risk, and 3, raw entrepreneurial ability, the kind that helps you build a successful drug business, and is also the same kind that helps you start a successful legal business, right? Yeah.
I see all the transferable skills, from being an illegal entrepreneur to becoming a legal entrepreneur. I think the only difference, was like, for me personally, was a time lapse, just like, operating on a marble notebook now, dealing with spreadsheets and reading P&Ls and, and all this stuff, and paying taxes,
And one more thing, just that it was that black markets don't create talent, but they capture it when the legal economy doesn't, which I love.
Yeah, I think that's fact, right? I don't know, as hustlers and as a black market, we see opportunities, right? Where there's a problem, where there's a missing factor, we're there to like be problem solvers. Yeah. And I feel like I learned that from my parents too, like they've always like figured out problems, right? Like how to get out from a dirt town where you're hearing like the metal sing and they sleeping on a floor, right? Yeah. To coming to sleeping on a bed. Yeah. It's a lot of work, and they did it.
Yeah, 100%. How are your parents now? Are they so proud of you?
Yeah. No, my mom doesn't like the weed part, but but yeah, overall I think she respects the mission, right? Yeah. Like she's seen so many people that I've touched, so many people that I've hired, right? Like, and she's created relationships with them, and it's crazy, to see where it's gone, where it is.
Yeah. And how about your son?
He's good. And he's 18.
No way.
Yeah, he's 18. He's in Rochester Institute of Technology.
Nice.
Studying aerospace mechanical engineering.
No way.
So he's trying to be a nerd, but he, I don't know, he took a lot of, I don't know. I just keep it very transparent with him, and I never hid anything from him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's helped him, and then also like taking the right path and seeing it into fruition where it's at right now,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's been such a great time. I really enjoyed talking to you. And I'm really impressed by what you've built. And I think there's this business side of it, but there's also the impact side of it, which is huge, right? All the amount of people that you've been able to help through your business, which is pretty special.
And one last thing, like Martin Luther King, we have a statement outside our building in the, from where our store's at. And he basically states like the largest problem and the biggest thing that we're going to try to solve as a society together is going to be the criminal justice system and the rehabilitation system. So like he said, that's the largest problem that we got to try to fix because it's broken and it's not working.
Right. And it's forgotten so often, right? Because people think that inmates don't deserve anything.
And they actually flew me out to the United Nations in Vienna.
Oh, wow.
And they had me speak as like an example on how to roll out legalization across the world. So the director of human rights in the UN, he has a report that is due by 2030 to decriminalize drugs around the whole world. And so they were using me as an example of like how they should do it in every place around the world, which is crazy.
Right. I mean, and you're the perfect expert because you've had experiences on both sides, right?
Yeah.
On the legal and the illegal side. Yeah. That's really crazy.
That's crazy.
Well, congratulations on everything you've accomplished.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on The Hidden Third.
You already know. Appreciate you. This is amazing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.